Yeah, Jack's got a couple of fractures around the top of his cheek and his eye socket. At this stage, it's looking likely he'll require an operation to settle it down. And really, until the surgeon moves on, looks at it further, does some more investigation, that's about as far as I can tell you.
Obviously, that will rule him out for England and rule him out for, I would presume, best part of this year, if not.
Obviously, depending on when the operation happens, and if it is definitely required, which, like I say, is looking likely, and obviously the severity of the injury, that will then decide whether there's no way back for the Autumn Internationals. So it's still a little early to write him off for the whole of the Autumn Internationals, but that's still something we're going to have to assess in the next week or so.
From your point of view, as the Exeter head coach, what sort of a blow is it going into a couple of rounds in Europe and then a few Premiership games?
Yeah, like anything, I mean, it's always a blow when you lose good players, but obviously that's why you put a squad of people together, and we're kind of big believers here that is one person picks up an injury, it creates an opportunity for someone else, and that's very much how you just got to look at it. We just got to move forward. Now we have periods where Jack's picked up injuries or been unavailable. We've always just dealt with them very well. Obviously, I'm disappointed for him personally. He's on good form, obviously coming back from injuries he did last season, having a big end to the season, obviously going away with the Lions, starting this season very well for us, and obviously he'd want to have a couple of big rounds in the Champions Cup to get himself, right in the frame for England. That unfortunately has been damaged now with a pretty innocuous, unfortunate injury that's just absolutely no way to predict it and no way to protect yourself from it.
And I guess it brings up the whole player injury saga that's been playing out in the press and likewise in the past few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I don't think statistically, if you look at years gone past, it's massively different. I think there's a lot of injuries that are kind of knocking around at the start of this season that were potentially injuries that were there at the end of last year. You tend to get it at the start when players choose to play, or clubs choose to play someone towards the end of the season, and then you go into operations and recoveries. As example, we've got Luke Cowan-Dickey unavailable now. He played in the final and came off from the final without an injury, but he had a grumbling knee issue that needed an operation that required a lengthy recuperation. So it's not an injury he's picked up this year. We have picked them up like other sides, and we're still picking them up. But I don't think it's anything particularly to do with a loading issue with it being a Lions tour. I mean, one thing that potentially is interesting, and again, it's one of those things that is a current bugbear of mine. When, as a rugby union, we keep deciding to keep changing laws and thinking we're improving the game. Once again, we seem to have been talking about tampering with the scrum again, which was going fine last year. Now, whether the reason to tamper with the scrum is to try and create the ball away from scrums quicker, because apparently everyone's moaning about ball staying in scrums and reset scrums, well, it's a pretty obvious repercussion that if the ball is going to go into a scrum and come straight out of a scrum, the ball's going to be in fit play a bit longer, which means there's going to be more collisions and more contacts, and there's always going to be a higher chance of injury if there's more collisions and more contacts. And I'm assuming that if you then put that alongside the fact that ourselves and Wasps last season probably had successful seasons by having quite high ball in play time, and if anybody's been influencing the Premiership to try and replicate that in any way, if you have a few more collisions in a game because you're looking for a higher ball in play time, then common sense says there's going to be more collision injuries. So I don't think it's a repercussion of particular loading. I think it just might be something at the start of the season has kicked up.
I guess the only positive is that Jack Nowell gets having had a very busy summer, obviously away with the Lions and that very long tour, he will have the opportunity to rest and have a bit more rest than if he would have had a fallow summer.
Jack Nowell doesn't need a rest. He played his second Premiership game on Christmas Eve. He's not had a big season, he's not had a big load. What did he play? I think he something like 9 Premiership games for us last year. Then he went on the Lions tour, and he was in the last couple of games he had very few minutes. His game minute load in the last year has not been very big, so he certainly doesn't require a rest, and he certainly doesn't need a rest. We were holding him back on a short leash really at the start of this season, trying to get him not to get out on the field. He would have come in and played game minute 1, trained flat out, done the whole pre-season, done every pre-season game. you know, we had to hold him back from that. So he's just hugely frustrated because he feels good to go, he feels fresh, and now he's going to be held back for the next 6 to 8 weeks.